So we've just heard the brilliant Tyler, the Creator, signed to XL Records. The brainchild, a long distant past ago, of Richard Russell. How you doing, Richard?
Very well, how are you?
Good, thank you for joining us in our lovely Swish boudoir.
Pleasure.
For the Independent Chart podcast. I mean, I'm sure you're aware, we've just been looking at the rundown there. Tyler, the Creator, is in the independent charts. It's been going for decades, and were you aware of the independent chart in the last decade?
Not that aware.
No, but are you excited that Tyler, the Creator, is already in the Breakers chart and rising?
I could become excited about it.
Okay, well that's what we're here.
I just got here.
Yeah, no, you're just warming up with your cup of tea.
Just the idea of it.
Okay. Well, we're celebrating the independent chart, obviously singles, albums, the whole kibosh and caboodle, and as the head of, you know, one of the UK's finest indie independent labels, then we had to get you in here and grill you on how it all came about and
Thank you.
what you've got up your sleeve next, and canaries possibly at some point. Richard's brought his canary book with him. Coloured Type and Song Canaries, a complete guide. So how did it all come about? I mean, I'm avid collector of the XL label. I've still got my old silver and black Prodigy, and even before that some old rave stuff. Was it set up in the kind of rave heyday?
It was, yeah. Did you see the Jamie XX remix of Adele, Rolling in the Deep?
Yeah.
In one of those sleeves.
Yeah,
Did you get
yeah,
the vinyl of it?
I didn't get the vinyl, no, but I've seen.
And we still use those sleeves, but for some reason it worked particularly nicely with that one. It just really looked great.
I mean, but back then the sleeve did kind of matter, didn't it? Even up till Mo Wax, and even now, you know. But particularly then, it was like people went in. It was like, oh, it's on Slip and Slide, or it's on XL, or they actually bought the record because it was on that label.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, I'd grown up with the labels that were very important to me were the independent hip hop labels, the New York independent labels. So that was an era of those when I was a teenager, and I started being a DJ, which was there was Tommy Boy, and there was Tough City, and there was Warlock, and there was Next Plateau, and there was a whole heap of them. It was a very vibrant, you know, rap music was a very independent scene at that time, and everything was on small independent labels, pretty much all in New York at that stage, and I loved those labels. I mean, I was fascinated by everything. I was fascinated, you know, obviously the music was the thing, but then every credit was fascinating and sort of exotic as well, sort of unimaginable where it was, you know, in some sort of faraway place. So you'd be looking at the credits and looking at the studios where it was recorded and who the engineer was. But the label was very important, you know, Sleeping Bag Records or Fresh Records, any of those type of labels. So yeah, I definitely grew up with it meaning a lot. And those, and of course then Def Jam as well, being, I suppose, the one of those labels that became the most prominent, really.
So this was late 80s.
Yeah.
And what year did you actually start XL?
Well, XL was 89, and I was listening to those records from sort of mid 80s, really, from when I got into those things at 80, you know, sort of 84, 85, like age for me, sort of 13 or 14. Someone actually said to me the other day, they remember hearing Rapper's Delight by the Sugar Hill Gang and thinking it can't get any better, you know?
Yeah.
And hearing The Message by Grandmaster Flash thinking it can't get any better. It's not going to get any better than this. Like, music can't get any better than that. And I really related to that. That's what that felt like at that stage. So yeah, I think the labels were just part of it. I think if you're a deep music fan, record collector, growing up type, the labels are just there. They're just a big part of it, aren't they?
So you were a DJ, and you were kind of obviously a massive avid music fan. But what actually tipped you over into thinking, I can do this? You know, let's set up a label.
Well,
let's sign someone.
I didn't ever think that. Or it was pure accident. I mean, the connector for all of this was a record shop called Groove Records in Soho. Did you used to go there? No.
Before my time, I believe.
I don't think so.
It's true.
Groove Records, 52 Greek Street, was pretty much the only place you could buy an imported 12-inch single in the West End. There was a place called Record Shack as well, but they specialised in high energy, which was a whole other kind of thing. That was where you could buy a rap record, or a house record. And the guy who owned that shop was called Tim Palmer. There's two Tim Palmers in music. That one's a record producer, but this was Tim who owned Groove, and whose mum used to work behind the counter.
Nice.
And I was a customer there, and I used to save up, because it was a fiver, and that was an investment. That was a serious thing. You had to think about what you were going to buy. When it was a 12-inch, and I used to get the tube up to Soho from Edgware, where I lived, and that was just a major thing. That whole outing, the whole doing of that, was a major thing for me in doing that as a teenager.
Going home with one record.
Yeah, in a bag. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So how long did you spend choosing that one particular record?
Well, you'd have to think about it, but there were certain specialist radio shows at that time that you used to listen to, that would play these things, where you could hear these records, and actually, there were 3 rap shows. There was Dave Pearce, Westwood, and Mike Allen, who all had rap shows, so you could hear that was it. That was where you could hear that kind of music, and that was it. I mean, there wasn't anything else. There was no other type of exposure whatsoever. It was just those shows, so you had to tune in and listen to them. I suppose that was. But you know what I really dreamed of in those days? The thing that was my ultimate dream was the internet.
Right.
That's really what I wanted.
Yeah, but you didn't know what it was.
No, but that's what I wanted. I wanted total access to all this stuff that I knew was out there.
Yeah.
I wanted to be able to hear it. I didn't want to save up a fiver.
No.
Every time I wanted to, get business, I wanted all. And the videos. I really wanted to see the videos.
Yeah.
As well, because you knew that videos were starting to emerge, starting to get made.
So you kind of psychically invented the internet.
I welcomed it, is what I'd say. I think some people, especially in the music world and the record label world, greeted it with horror. But I remember thinking this is more like the sort of fulfillment of some kind of a fantasy for me, and for music fans, it obviously is.
Yeah.
That then comes with its problems because it can overwhelm you a bit with how much stuff there is.
Yeah.
Then you go from the problem of having too little to too much, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, but back to Tim. Tim was selling so many of certain records that he hit on the idea that he could license the record. Completely radical at that time. Just license the record from the label he was buying the singles from in New York, and then he could press the records and sell the records rather than importing them. And that led to a label called City Beat. And that was what XL was born out of, was
Right,
City
okay.
Beat. So I just got to know Tim from being a customer in there. So that was what it was born out of. But it wasn't really my idea. I mean, I was a DJ and I was into making beats and making tunes, and the rave thing was sort of coming along, and that was interesting. I mean, it was interesting. It was a bit at first, we were all a bit like, because it was. I think we all had dreams of hip hop.
Yeah.
And making hip hop
You were
records.
a b-boy.
You were b-boys, and
yeah.
that was the thing. And then but it was tough. It was tough to do it. We did stuff, but no one used to take much notice. And then for whatever reason, when you started speeding, putting the brakes on the wrong speed and mucking about with synths, it was immediately more interesting to people.
Yeah, too exciting to pass by.
Yeah, and it just worked, and it seemed so sort of easy and effortless. But I think there was a phase where we were definitely like, we weren't sure if it was really. It felt like almost like a bit of a dilution, but then it became something else, and you just got, and XL was very much full of frustrated b-boys. Liam Howlett being one of them.
Yeah.
And that was SL2. That was. I mean, we were all just into hip hop records.
Yeah.
And we're sort of like, we're going to have to put these brakes on the wrong speed and play synths on top.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way anyone's going to take any notice. Because we're here, we're not there. So there were also, we were also all involved to some extent in rap records as well and making hip hop records. But the rave thing just sort of crept in, and it just was it was just an unstoppable sort of force, and it was very exciting, and the events were exciting, and the DJ, and obviously you could DJ, and actually there'd be a lot of people there listening, and there was all the things that go with a scene like that, that make it exciting. There was an abundance of everything that could make a scene exciting. So so XL definitely became one of the, there was also Shut Up and Dance, which to me is one of the really great record labels sort of all time. I love Shut Up and Dance. It's definitely one of the great cult labels who put out a lot of incredible music with amazingly artistic, I think, Shut Up and Dance. Yeah. Possibly through a certain amount of naivety. But all of those, Ragged Twins and Roman Black and Nicolette and a lot of the things they put out, I really loved. But there were lots of great labels around. You know, there was Suburban Bass, which was good. Network was doing good things up in Birmingham.
So I mean, people that maybe are listening that weren't around then, you know, they know these names. SL2, obviously the Prodigy, one of the biggest ones. I mean, how quickly did that all kind of explode? You started putting out 12 inches by them, you know, Charlie and things like that. Like how quickly did that all kind of hit the sort of mainstream, get in the charts?
Well, it did and it didn't hit the mainstream. You know, it only hit the mainstream because it was very, very popular in the scene it was in, but it wasn't getting played on the radio. It wasn't getting written about in the press, including places like the music press. No one took any note. It was different. You know, now subcultures are seized on very quickly by the media. The media's interested in subcultures, so, you know, it'll be a subculture 1 minute, but the Guardian will be writing. Well, actually, the Guardian will be writing about it that minute, not even a minute later. They'll, you know, the media's.
Yeah.
But the media wasn't interested in things like that then. It was a much more old-fashioned kind of thing. There weren't really young people working in those places, and they weren't interested. So actually, you could do stuff like we were doing. No one took any notice, but the records got so popular. So we'd put out 12 inches that would sell, you know, 100,000, 150,000, and go into the pop chart, but not off the back of anything except DJs playing them, pirate radio. So that was great because we were sort of just outside of everything really, and I think we were quite exalted. It was very suburban, you know. Not the artists were from Essex. I was from Edgware. The feeling it was very sort of suburban.
Mm.
So I think we were quite. There was also quite some more fashionable scenes going on at that time, and they definitely looked right down their noses at us. That was definitely the vibe at the time because there were more sort of fashionable club type scenes going on, and yeah, that was fine. You know, because it was raw. It was really raw. There was a lot of excitement to it.